Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us to our second session of the day. Right now we have Maeva, who is a 2009 Antarctic alumni coming to speak to us. She currently works at Meowpar, and yeah, can't wait to hear your presentation, Maeva. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks, Michaela and Scott. It's really a pleasure to be here and to be amongst fellow alumni from SOI. I think it's funny, I meet new people sometimes who were part of the SOI, and I feel like we're all like a big family around the world. So it's really nice to connect. So can you see my screen at this point or not yet?
Not yet.
Okay, because right now it's...
There we go.
Okay, you can? Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Let me know if there's any glitch. Okay, so, well, hi, everyone. I'm really super grateful to be here and be a part of the Alumni Summit this week. I know a few friends from SOI family are joining, but please feel free to use the chat to connect and share your thoughts and comments. I think as being part of an alumni, we all share this love for the poles and also this like deep sense of the importance of experiential learning in our journey. And so it's always exciting to see where people are at now after 10 years, 15 years after those expeditions. So today I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about my journey, more specifically my PhD research, which I'm almost at the end. I'm finishing my dissertation this upcoming weekend and hoping to defend January 9. So it's really the completion of 8 years now of PhD. So I'm really happy to be at that point. And I'll be sharing a little bit more about the use of arts-based research. So things like photos and videos to engage youth, especially Inuvialuit youth, on climate change. So I've been working in Tuktoyaktuk since 2018. Actually, we see Carmen Kuptana there on the photo, and she was also she's also an SOI alumni. I don't think she's around today, but she's been part of the project since 2018 as well. So we became friends along the years. So many people are involved in this project, including Jaro Malanowski from Avatar Media, working closely with Inuvialuit School in Tuktoyaktuk, and also the Community Corporation, and the Youth Collective, which they call themselves Tuk TV Youth, Ariel, Daryl, Carmen, Nathan, and Brian. So really happy to be joining you here today from the Lekwungen-speaking people territory. I'm based in Victoria, BC, which is the land of the Songhees, Esquimalt, and West Sanish peoples. And very grateful to be raising my family here and to keep learning and living on these territories. And I'm originally actually from Quebec, but moved to the West Coast now almost 20 years ago, 19 years ago, to study the ocean. And eventually, through my master's in ocean ecology, my supervisor sent me to the Arctic. So it was my first time. Actually, that was after Antarctica. So I went to the Students on Ice Antarctica expedition in 2009. That was in February 2009. And so I met many of the SOI family there. And then after that, after I got back, my supervisor said, "Do you want to go to the Arctic?" So he sent me for 6 weeks on an icebreaker, on the Amundsen icebreaker. And I really fell in love with the Arctic. I guess Antarctica was really beautiful in its own way. Lots of wildlife and amazing place for sure. But I find with the Arctic, it was the fact that there were so many communities living there. Compared to Antarctica, which is more scientific community. But in the Arctic, the Inuit knowledge fascinated me. And so it kind of piqued my interest to kind of start working more with people rather than simply the marine ecology. Everything is connected, right? So so that was my first initial curiosity to work more with communities. And so why arts-based research? I was in pretty deep deep sea biology, actually. So no pun intended. I was pretty deep in biology, and then eventually I kind of got more into the use of video and getting the science out of the ivory tower, and working with communities. And I noticed with video that youth were so engaged right away. And it was a great way to connect them with their traditional knowledge. In a way, working with youth in Alaska after my master's, I've noticed that it kind of gave them an excuse to talk to their community members and their family members and ask questions around certain topics. So I had an interest with the use of video, and I met someone, Crystal Tremblay, who was using participatory video, they call it. So it's like a documentary style approach, but it's very much led by the community. So the community is choosing the story, choosing who they want to interview, and they are part of the process. And you, as a grad student or as a practitioner, you become more the facilitator of that process. So I really like the approach. And so I thought it could be a good way to kind of go back to school for my PhD and explore more community-led research. And I've never heard of community-led research when I was in more the biology or earth science and earth and ocean science field. So it kind of was an aha moment for me to think, wow, we can do research that is actually community-led, and they can be part of the process from the beginning. And so I decided to play around with that and use photovoice, story map, and participatory video in my research. It's also known as a very powerful tool for engagement, building agency, for communicating between policy and community members. It kind of becomes a bit of a glue between people. So that attracted me to. I ended up spending quite a bit of time in Tuktoyaktuk when there in 2018. Actually, Students Alliance Foundation gave me my first small grant to get there and just start by listening to people and meet the youth and see what they were interested in. So that's a small plane going from Whitehorse to Inuvik, and then from Inuvik, I'll show you a map here. So Tuktoyaktuk is all the way on the Arctic Ocean, Northwest Territories. And if you fly to Inuvik, which is a little bit more south than Tuktoyaktuk on the map, it's about 2 hours drive. Some people drive all the way to Tuk. Actually, there is a road. It's a long road from Victoria to Tuk. It would take 56 hours nonstop. If you did it, some people rent a vehicle in Whitehorse and can drive all the way to Tuk as well that way. It's a great way to see the landscape and meet people, for sure. I've never driven the whole way, but normally flew to Whitehorse or Edmonton and then overnight, and then going to Tuk the next day. And in terms of a little bit background about Tuktoyaktuk, it's 90% Inuvialuit, the community there. It means place resembling a caribou in terms of its shape. It was a base for oil and gas development in the Beaufort Sea in the 70s and the 80s. So it brought a lot of services up north and definitely pushed, I think, towards, getting eventually access with a road. So it's now the only Canadian Arctic village accessible via all-year road. Before that, it was the ice road. So in 2017, it started to be more accessible. And that brought a lot of changes, for sure, in their community. But I would say in general, access makes it's very nice because they can now drive to Inuvik or Whitehorse to, if they need specific things like groceries or, fixing their cars and things like that. It does help, I think, in general to have that access. So my PhD research aimed to better understand the perceptions and solutions from the youth on different things. We kind of kept it broad at the beginning. I didn't want to impose the topic because in fashion of community-led research, you kind of give the power in the community's hands to decide what they would like to work on. So we had some brainstorming, and climate change came as a big issue, but surprisingly didn't use the term climate change. They use more things are happening in daily lives, like the hunting routes are changing, or the animal migration is changing, or the sea ice is not safe. So all these combined kind of together made us realize that it was about climate change. So they decided to call the film Happening to Us. And so they worked on that film mostly. And the other research questions that I've had around my research was around youth, how in what ways youth are mobilizing around some of those issues identified, and what strategies and tools can help amplify those actions. So as I'm standing after my research is more or less completed in some ways. I mean, I feel like it's never really finished because those relationships will continue, but I can now have a better sense of how these things have helped amplify their voices and open up some doors. So I'll share more about that. So after we had our first visit in 2018, we went back June 2019 for about a month in the community, a month and a bit. But the participatory video workshop was 2 weeks, 2 weeks and a half. And two main topics were developed. There was a climate change topic and also living in two worlds, which many youth felt like sometimes they were caught between the traditional and the modern world. And this is something that I hear again and again from other communities as well in the North. So it's a big part of this transition, right? So 15 interviews or conversations were done by the youth. They interviewed themselves, they interviewed elders, they interviewed community members who are active hunters in the community. And we also did reflection interviews after the workshop. And so that was 2019. We had about grade 6 to 9, and I'm saying 5 to 7 participants because if some of you have worked in the northern context and know a little bit about this, you have to be very flexible. Participation can vary, and some days we would have 5 participants, some days we would have 10, and we just keep going and be understanding that people have other priorities, and your research is never really their priority, right? So it's shifting that mindset from, oh, I'm doing the research, I'm doing field work, I gotta gather my data for a week or for 2 weeks. This was very much like adjusting to the local rhythm. It was in June, so it was mostly daylight all the time. So the youth would go to bed at 5 a.m. and get up really late. So if we did a workshop at 9 a.m., there would have been 0 people. So we started often to have our first workshops in the day around 3 p.m. And then sometimes went on to midnight because the light was really, really beautiful. As we were gating later in the night, there will be beautiful, there was no sunsets, but beautiful colors showing up. And so a lot of smiles. People love the hands-on work. So you see here Ariel on the left, Nathan and Daryl on the top right, and Nathan at the bottom right as well, filming around. And some of the things that they filmed was to show the erosion. So in Tuktoyaktuk, they are due to relocate within about 30 years due to permafrost thawing and erosion. There's been so this house that we see, Noella Cockney, she was in the news. Actually, CBC did an interview with her, and her house was in June 2019 when we filmed her house was located there, and you could see some shoreline in front of her house. And 2 months later, you could see the difference. So it's very drastic. In one storm, they can lose about 2 meters, 3 meters of shoreline because the soil is it's permafrost, but it's also thawing, and there's ice mixed in, right? So as there's some bigger storms in the summertime, those shores are really hard. They can lose a lot of ground. So I would say maybe 20, I think it was 2022, we got this picture from our friend, colleague, Michelle from the school, and they moved her house. They moved her house more inland. So they did that a few times already for all the houses that were closer to the peninsula in Tuk. So it's definitely happening fast, and the youth want to share a message around that. So while we were doing the main film workshop, they were super lucky to have this big delegation coming to Tuktoyaktuk, and it was the National Inuit Climate Change Strategy starting and being launched. And so Nathan Obed from Inuit Taparit Kanatami, which is an organization based in Ottawa, and they do a lot of Inuit rights work. And so they were there with Catherine McKenna, who's a former Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. So they got to spend time with them and have conversations. And from there, they got invited to go to the UN Climate Change Conference in the COP25 at the time. So that was a great experience, and I'll share a little bit more about that. But going back to the process, I found that this has been more, the process sometimes is almost as important, or if not more, than the product. And so for me, I find that this process of participatory video has really given an opportunity for the youth to have meaning, a sense of meaning and purpose throughout this project, and the sense of teamwork. And so through all of that, they've built their own knowledge. They've shared knowledge among each other, but also shared knowledge to other people, like policymakers or community members in Tuktoyaktuk and beyond. And so it kind of gave them an excuse to have a dialogue about this issue. And so what Ariel was saying is that she would know about climate change, but doing this project really helped her learn more about it and talk more about it with her peers. Otherwise, they don't honestly talk about it on the day-to-day, right? They might be like, hey, how's climate change affecting you today? They don't really, I like this method for that fact that it does create that space, that safe space to have conversations around that. And myself, I learned so much from them about it. Like when I started, I thought, climate change is affecting their subsistence foods. I thought that was the main thing. And then I realized, well, climate change is affecting everything. It's connected to everything. It's connected to mental health. It's connected to cultural identity. It's connected to community well-being. It's just so many things, right? And so my own definition of climate change impacts have changed through interacting with them. So it's been an amazing journey. And so looking at this, and it's funny because I think of my master's and using, stats. There's no stats in my PhD, which I've really enjoyed. I've always loved more qualitative methods, but I didn't know there was no stats in qualitative methods. So when I started, it was a nice surprise. So participatory video, I've used focus group or group conversations in this setting. Photovoice, which is more the use of photo with narration. So you can have photos that the youth are taking and they can write captions or discuss what they're seeing in the picture. Story Map, I've used Story Map to be able to share their photovoice project. Interviews, film screening to policymakers and community members. So these are the main arts-based methods that I've used and that many people in that field that I know are using as well. So it's so this is a photo of COP25. So when we went to the UN Climate Change Conference, they were part of the Inuit Circumpolar Council delegation, which was great because there were other Inuit representatives from Alaska here, and we had also Crystal, she's still in Ottawa, I believe. Crystal Martin Lipinski. She was the National Youth Inuit Council president at the time. So that was, and they showed their film. We had a first version of their film happening to us. It was a 22-minute, and it was shown about 6 times during that week. And it was so busy. It was such an overwhelming conference. And Ariel and Carmen at the time, they were about 16 years old. So I can't imagine how overwhelming I would have been if it was me at 16. So a lot of screenings, a lot of attention. They also met with people from other communities who are also affected by climate change and relocation. people from Tonga, people from some Pacific islands that are really affected as well. So they did additional interviews as well, and we visited with the ambassador of Canada in Spain. So it was a very official visit as well. Now, just to share, just gonna rewind here. I'm gonna share the trailer of their film in 3 minutes. Hope the sound will go through. Let me know if not, and we can post the link in the chat. So yeah, so every time I watch this trailer, it gives me goosebumps. Yeah, I can't wait to share more of the final documentary. We're planning for early 2026 for to start with the film festivals process and journey, and then we'll be able to share it more broadly after that. Some of the comments that the youth have made from COP25. I will. So this is Ariel. Going on the trip to Spain was eye-opening. People from all over the world came in with their cultural knowledge, and it was so interesting. Every culture was so different, but yet there was one thing we all had in common, that we are losing our land, and with that comes the disappearance of a platform where our people practiced their survival skills. And Carmen shared that my favorite thing about COP25 is seeing so much people from diverse parts of the world and having different backgrounds in life, and seeing them coming together and putting their differences aside, to help find solutions to the problems we face as a humanity today. Also, being around other Indigenous youth and leaders made me feel more supported and heard when I wanted to speak about the problems my community and people are facing today, and that I'm not the only one who stands with wanting change and actions to be done. So what's next? Well, the film release is coming up. My PhD is also towards the end. I've been writing a lot the past year. I'll have some publications coming out soon about how this type of work can support resilience and youth leadership. I've read a lot about resilience, and it seems to me with all this work that the sense of relational resilience is very crucial. So the sense of working together as a team, this youth and adult partnership, it's this support system, and the youth always have something to look forward to, being the next opportunity or the next research project that they could be a part of. So all this I'm writing about right now, and I will be sharing some of those papers coming out as well. And the power of youth to youth exchange as well. I've noticed the importance of that, and there's been some talks about it'd be great to do more youth to youth exchange from Arctic to Arctic communities. So there's been also some brainstorming around that. And so recent opportunities that the youth have been involved in, we had Inuit Youth Climate Action Summit in Victoria. That was in 2023. They came here, they met with South Nation, First Nation here near Victoria, near CINUK, and also with Saanich. And so it was for the project called CINUK, a CINUK funded project where we looked at mental health, climate change, and the use of arts. And this was another opportunity, the Indigenous Filmmakers Mentorship Program. So they were selected, Carmen and Ariel, for this mentorship program, which they did a short film that was shown in Finland more recently. I think it was February last year. And also through that more recent research project, they have met with Environment Canada, and they contributed to Canada's Changing Climate Report that's going to come out in 2026. And to what Environment Canada shared with us is that the first time they are including Indigenous voices in this report. So it's a big deal, and we're really happy that this happened. Through bridging, using arts to bridge policy and youth. I'm really passionate about that, and I am glad that this happened. But again, like, if my project would have been 2 years, I don't think we would have seen those impacts. So sometimes long-term dedication to certain community members who are keen on making a change, I think can show impacts in the long term. But I think that this speaks to the importance of long-term work with the community and dedicated work, which I was hoping to do for my PhD, because I've worked before with communities where you're 2 weeks or 1 week in and you leave, and then the project is over, and so you don't have the same kind of impacts in that sense with the community. So many groups came together to support this work. Initially, as I was mentioning, there were very few, and so Students on Ice was one of them. They helped me, just get that initial funding to visit at first, and many funders, they would want to ask, what are the deliverables, and what are what's the impact? And often you don't know right away, because when you're starting to work with a community in a good way, you got to start with relationship building. And so I was lucky to get support from Students on Ice initially to get started on that. And Inuvialuit School with Michelle Tomasino, the teacher there, she has been the key community champion there, and it's someone that I've met in Victoria years ago. And it was my first connection in Tuktoyaktuk. So I think starting with a connection you have is a great way to expand and build from there. It was easier for me to build the trust because they were trusting Michelle already, and she could introduce me to people. But many people supported along the way. I'm very grateful for this as well. And so here I left a QR code if you want to connect on LinkedIn. I'll be sharing as soon as we know the launch date for for film festivals for the film screening. And I'll be going to the ArcticNet conference in Calgary in December. If some of you are going, I'd be happy to connect there. And with my new role at MEOPAR, which is the Ocean Research Network, it's a remote organization in Canada. I've been supporting community-led research for the past year. So we've put out some funding to support more communities to lead their own ocean-related research. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions about my journey there, or if you're curious about community-led research support with MEOPAR, I'd be happy to help and connect with you. So perhaps after my PhD submission deadline, which is I have a big push next weekend, but I'd be happy to connect and brainstorm and chat away. So thank you so much. I will stop sharing my screen and then be able to see the screen for chat, for questions. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments. The link, I just saw a question come up around the link. The link for LinkedIn or the link to the trailer? I will put chat. Chat. I'm trying to. Hi, Tammy. I'd love to put it in the chat here, but I only have the private chat right now. Okay, thank you, Michele. Great. Yeah, because if any of you have used some art-based research methods, or if you're thinking about it, I'd be happy to brainstorm around that. Always good. Hey, thanks, Sue. Any other questions, comments? Oh, Hazel, thanks for the question. What other communities have you been to in the Arctic? Throughout the year, well, I was a part of the Canada C3 expedition with Students on Ice in 2017, and it was from Cambridge Bay to Tuktoyaktuk. It was a beautiful, amazing experience. And besides that, before I went back to school for my PhD, I was working with an organization. It was called Shore Zone, and we were doing coastal mapping in helicopter in Alaska. So that took me to a few places in Alaska, mostly Kaktovik, Barrow, Kotzebue, and then Anchorage, just a little bit more south, and then Nome as well. So a few coastal communities there. And yeah, when I was on the icebreaker, it was more at sea, so not so much time to be with people in the communities. Where we'll be able to watch the full film once it's finished. Well, initially we're gonna try and get it to film festivals, and then once it's premiered, we'll be able to share more globally. I was thinking maybe as a screening at the next ArcticNet premiere, and then maybe we can talk to students on ICE as well. Maybe we could plan a screening in some venue. But initially, early 2026, we'll start with some of the film festivals and go from there. But if you want to follow a little bit more, there's also a Tuk TV page on Facebook, which could help with getting some updates on that. Thank you, Kirsten. Kind of feels surreal to defend after all this time. I forgot to mention, I brought the family up north with me. My kids were pretty young, so if anybody needs some advice on that, I'd be happy to share. Was there an experience that surprised you or stayed with you the most or most with your work? I'd say, merci, Eric. Same last name. Be interesting to see if we're connected in our families, if our families are connected in Quebec. I would say yes. So you hear a lot of elders talking about the changes they're seeing, but for me, one of the most surprising thing is when I started to work with the youth in Tuck, 15-year-olds saying, there's been so many changes the past 5 years. And it was like, whoa, you kind of realize how fast things are changing when young people are talking about such, drastic change within 5 years. It's not an elder saying they've seen changes over 40 years. So for me, that was something that really struck me. And also when the youth met with the ambassador of Canada in Spain, having that deep conversation between the ambassador and the youth for an hour and a half, and the youth saying, why do we need to deal with this? This is not, we didn't cause this, yet we're one of the most affected. So it made me realize the social justice and environmental justice side of things, and how it's unfair, that young people, Inuit young people that are the ones dealing with this, right? And it's a huge stress on their mental health and the community. But there's also a lot of hope and a lot of hope and a lot of strength that I'm seeing, which is always amazing. So one of the young people I've worked with, Brian Kovacic, he's an artist based in Inuvik now, and he's been saying, we're grieving the past and welcoming the water. So it is tension between grieving and accepting of the change, but also being hopeful for the future, and that they will remain strong and adapt to this, right? So yeah, thanks for the question. Hey, hi Olivia. I think we've met in CINUK in Greenland. So how long did I stay in Tuck in total? Well, I've been multiple times. I would say maybe 5 times over since 2018. We couldn't travel there there were some very strong COVID restrictions between 2020 and 2022, roughly. So for 2.5 years, we could not travel. So we did some remote workshops during that time, and worked also with some filmmakers from Inuvialuit Communication Society in Inuvik. They are 2 hours away from Tuck, so we've collaborated with them as well. But I would say, yeah, the first visit, the second visit, I stayed longer, 2 weeks and a month and a half, a month and a half. And then after that were mostly 2 weeks visits. So, and the youth also came down south. They came to Victoria. We also met in Ottawa. So trying to also meet outside of Tuck sometimes, because I realize how much, how much it benefits them to experience things outside of their community as well, and go back and bring that leadership and those ideas back in their community. So I've noticed that also makes an impact. So it's yeah, beautiful place to see for sure. So where Where did I learn different ways of storytelling, videography, photo voice? Thanks, Mirab, for your question. I was really interested in filmmaking in general when I did my master's in marine ecology. So I took a scientific filmmaking course in Bamfield. It was like a 3-week course. And then I added up to that different workshops over the years. So a film direction course at UVic, and a magazine writing course, and this and that. And the Band Film Festival has there was a adventure filmmakers workshop. So over the years, I've learned through different workshops, but also I realized that filmmaking is very collaborative. So you can also work as a team. And so I've been very grateful to work with Jaro Malinowski, a producer filmmaker originally from Edmonton, and he's worked with many communities as well. And so he had a community filmmaking approach as well. So working with a team to expand the skills is very crucial as well. So some people can focus more on the production side of things, like trying to get the funding and organizing and coordinating the different partners and groups involved, and the filmmaking aspect of more the technical side and handling the camera. But also we also had the youth leading a lot of the hands-on work. So Yarrow kind of took more of a behind the scene role, where supporting and mentoring the youth to get the best shots. So and then photo voice, I would say photo voice is fairly simple in terms of the resources you need. They take photos even with their phones that could work, and so phones or iPads, and then you do a conversation in a space. It could be a community center or a classroom, and you can have people describe what photos they took. And I did that for a plastics project in Tuk, because waste management is a big issue up north as well. And so they took photos of what they love in their community and some of the issues they see around waste and plastics in their environment. So we did they shared their photos and talk about it. So photo voice can be a fairly simple way to engage using arts that doesn't require as much time or resources than a video, because the video, there's also the editing phase, right? So that takes also more time. But you can do it with different budgets. Actually, on my LinkedIn profile, in my feature section, there's a short PDF that we built with Crystal Tremblay that explains some of those tools, participatory video, community mapping, and photo voice. And so you can download that PDF if you're interested in learning more about it. It's a great tool in research, I find, for community engagement. And photo voice is great to understand the priorities of a community. And when you start a project but you're not quite sure what are the questions that they are interested in, photo voice is a great way to kind of get started and understanding their priorities. Thanks, Hazel. Have the youth expressed interest in continuing to learn more about film after this? That's definitely interest. I would say Carmen and Ariel have kept going at it. I would say the challenge is being in a remote community. There's sometimes opportunities coming their way. We've been working a bit with the Inuvialuit Filmmaking Society, a communication society in Inuvik, and they've sent opportunities to the youth in Tuk, because they know they're there. They know they have film gear, because through the project, we were able to buy some film gear for the community. And so they hired them on shoots sometimes, and assistant producer, things like that. So, and I think it speaks to the importance of research collaborations. So it's thinking about what other research projects might be happening and how can we work together so the youth can have continued opportunities through multiple projects, because my project eventually ends, right? So it's how can we make sure there's more opportunities coming their way. But I think there will be a good space for a story hub or a research hub in Tuk, because there's so many research projects happening in that small community. I would say 18 research projects from what I've heard, for a small community of about 1,000 people. So it's a lot to manage for them. So it'd be awesome if they could create more jobs locally to lead their own research projects. Thanks for your questions. Good questions.
Wow, Maeva, thank you very much for your session today. That was very inspiring to learn about your community-based research.
Thanks, Scott. That's great.
And thank you. No problem at all. And thank you for everybody attending today. That was, they were fantastic questions being asked. So in about 15 minutes time, we have a casual chat for anybody who wanted to jump on. We're going to send a Google Meets link, and everybody can kind of, see each other face to face and ask any questions they want.
Thank you so much. Merci.
Folks.